The claims that the election was stolen were so successful, President Trump and his allies raised $250 million, nearly $100 million in the first week after the election.
Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren called it the big ripoff. $250 million raised using a lie that the election was stolen. And on this show, we like to follow the money. So let's take a look at what the committee found. Between Election Day and January 6th, the Trump campaign sent scores of emails to their supporters. In the emails were calls to donate to the so-called Official Election Defense Fund to fight voter fraud, even though the campaign knew those claims were absolutely false, as the committee laid out. But here's the even bigger thing. That fund didn't even exist. And the former guy and his allies made a ton of money off of it. On November 9th, 2020, Trump created the Save America PAC. According to investigators, most of that money raised from the so-called Election Defense Fund, well, it went there. That PAC then made millions of dollars of contributions to pro-Trump organizations. And among those organizations, $5 million went to the company that ran Trump's rally on the ellipse. Watch this.
The emails continued through January 6th, even as President Trump spoke on the ellipse. 30 minutes after the last fundraising email was sent, the Capitol was breached.
Then there's Kimberly Guilfoyle, Don Jr.'s fiancée. She spoke for less than 3 minutes on the 6th. The Washington Post reported she was paid $60,000 for that little speech by the conservative nonprofit Turning Point Action. And the sponsoring donor? The 72-year-old heiress of the Publix grocery store chain. For more, let's bring in the expert, Syracuse law professor David K. Johnson. He also wrote The Big Cheat, How Donald Trump Fleeced America and Enriched Himself and His Family. David, you might need to write a whole other book on this alone. You have been covering this man since the Atlantic City casino days in the 80s. Does any of this surprise you? He's always done it.
No,
and he's
not
never
at all.
had to pay a price.
Donald is the third generation head of a 4-generation white collar crime family that dates back to the late 1800s. And they have been doing this all their lives. You know, when you lose a campaign, it's impossible to raise money. Why would anybody give you money? You lost. Donald figured out how to turn it into a $250 million and growing money machine.
So you're pretty confident that Trump fundraising off the big lie is just a big fraud?
Oh, absolutely. And I think he's vulnerable to a federal charge of mail-in wire fraud. And you'll hear a lot of people say, well, there's a disclosure in the fine print that says we may use the money for something else. Well, I've talked to some federal prosecutors, and Lawrence Tribe, the Harvard constitutional scholar, also agrees that he's vulnerable to this. And the argument could be made by prosecutors that Trump knew that this was a scam, so he put in the, well, we might spend the money on something else provision as a part of that scam. Now, in addition to that, fraud, which is always and everywhere a crime, is also a civil offense. And every state has a civil fraud law. And so state attorneys general under consumer protection laws could also go after Trump for his fundraising deception.
Could, but do you think they really will? Because here's the thing, David, as a lifetime or multi-generational scammer, he knows exactly how to use these loopholes. So what makes one think they're going to get him this time? Remember when he was in office and we said, wow, when he's not the president anymore, he is going to be in so much trouble. Wait till they see all the money he made at the Trump Hotel and so on and so forth. But he's sitting pretty down at Mar-a-Lago.
Well, you hit upon the core problem here, which I assign to feckless Democrats. The Manhattan grand jury was the case to bring. Alvin Bragg, the new attorney general, shut it down, which caused his two top, very experienced prosecutors to resign as a matter of principle. Now, the governor of New York, Kathy Hochul, who's a Democrat, has unfettered authority to take any criminal case away from a district attorney and turn it over to another prosecutor. She didn't do it. Letitia James, the state attorney general, who's made a lot of noise about how she's going after Trump in a civil case, won't answer the question, did you ask Governor Hochul to reassign this case to your office and give you criminal authority? Carl Racine, the Attorney General of Washington, D.C., he had a case over the tens of millions of dollars from the Trump inaugural, where they went, never explained. There's a chapter in my book about the efforts to take money off the books illegally, criminal acts. Did he pursue that? No, he took a $750,000 fine and shut it down. So there's only Fannie Willis, the district attorney in the county that overlays Atlanta, pursuing her voter fraud case left, and perhaps Merrick Garland will authorize a case. There does seem to be an investigation going on by the Department of Justice. But yeah, I don't understand why these Democrats talk a big game and then fold.
Okay, then let's go back, because when he was president, Democrats would say they need to put new laws in place to prevent future presidents from abusing the norms the way Trump did. Have you seen any effort to create new laws, rules, regulations? Because last I checked, Trump could run for president tomorrow and he still wouldn't have to submit his taxes.
Right. There have been some bills introduced, but nothing has happened. And in fact, the United States Supreme Court, in a long story of decisions we could do a whole other segment about, have moved in the direction of basically legalizing bribery and criminal conduct by elected officials, by narrowing and narrowing and narrowing the ability of prosecutors to bring cases against people who are elected to office and abuse their power for their own benefit.
David, this evening's 11th hour broadcast has been brought to you by the letter F for feckless and fraud. David K. Johnston, thank you for joining us tonight. Please come back soon.